Hello and welcome to this lecture. And in this lecture, we are going to talk something about a better way of rendering template. So in the previous lecture, we have already created this template, which was index.html, and we had rendered that template in the views.py file right over here. So what we essentially have done here is that we have passed in the HTTP response, and that HTTP response basically has the code to render our template. But now in this lecture, what we will do is that we will learn a better way of rendering these templates so that we don't have to use the HTTP response. So the first and foremost thing which we need to do is that we need to import something which is called as render. So for that purpose, let's go ahead and import render. So it has to be imported from Django.shortcuts. So you simply type in from Django.shortcuts import, that's going to be render, and once render is imported, we are now good to go. So what this render function actually does is that it basically allows us to directly render the template instead of having to pass it as an HTTP response. So what we will do here is that we'll modify this thing a little bit. So instead of returning an HTTP response, we will actually go ahead and delete everything from here, and we will basically return render here, and we will pass in the request here, and then after passing in the request, we will actually pass in the template name directly over here. So the template name over here is nothing but index.html, and the path is photoapp/index.html. So simply pass in that path and the file name over here. So once we have passed this thing in, we also need to pass in the context over here to this particular render function. So simply pass in context and we are good to go. So once we have used the render function, we don't actually have to use the loader here. So we will go ahead and delete this line from here. And once we are done with this, we are good to go. So now let's open up our command prompt. Let's run the server and let's see if this thing works out well. So I'm going to open up this thing, and when I hit refresh, as you could see, it still works fine. That means the new render function which we have used is now working fine, just as the HTTP response. So the render function is actually more efficient than using a HTTP response. It actually works in a similar fashion, but the only thing is that you don't have to go ahead and load the template. You could directly pass in the template path over here along with the request and the context, and that's actually going to take care of your template loading out. So that's it for this lecture. Hopefully you guys were able to understand the significance of the render function and why exactly to use render function instead of using the HTTP response. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.